It was too hot. Unless one could experience it himself, the heat was totally beyond imagination. Just as her sweat appeared, it immediately evaporated, then, it was followed by the next bout of hot perspiration. She felt as if her entire body system was struggling to keep her alive, just like an old dog on its deathbed, rapidly panting amidst the blistering hot air. Comparatively, Luther looked much stronger. Even though he was carrying Marcy, he was definitely doing better than Lin Sanju. He noticed it himself. He asked loudly, "Hey, you, body becoming stronger." "What?" Lin Sanju raised her voice and shouted. The engine sounds around them were too loud. Luther was just on the other side of the car, but she had difficulty hearing him. "I said." Luther went around the car and walked toward her. Marcy was taller than him, so while he carried her on his back, her feet were dragging on the ground. "Have you experienced your body becoming stronger?" She had only said a single word just now, yet Lin Sanju could feel that her tongue was totally dry. It was so dry that she could feel the dryness in her larynx. She did not dare to open her mouth again. She only shook her head, hinting to Luther that they should quickly continue walking. Luther's face showed his surprise. He wanted to say something, but how was this a good time for idle chatter? He quickly nodded his head as they continued traversing through the queue of cars which were spewing hot air. Lin Sanju had to wipe her eyes every few steps. She was sweating too much, her sweat had just entered her eye. The hot stingy sensation was unbearable. She couldn't refrain from doubting herself. Was there a time limit to the effectiveness of her heat resistance adaptation? Otherwise, what could explain why she didn't feel as hot when they started, yet she was perspiring so profusely right now? If this went on, could she even reach the supermarket before dying from dehydration? The two of them looked around in silence. There was a median barrier in the center of the road which separated the two-direction flow of the traffic. However, in times of crisis, there were only that many people who could still abide by the traffic code. Currently, the cars were tangled in a messy disarray. Some of the cars were in the right direction, while there were others that were trapped against the traffic. If they had to climb over that barrier, it will not only take a toll on their body, and carrying Marcy was also a problem. Furthermore, they had to continue walking through that burning hot car queue again. That will definitely kill them. Without even discussing, both of them walked towards the end of the queue. The person who drove the Land Rover was a skinny woman. When the both of them walked past, Lin Sanju noticed that the driver had fallen over in the car. The driver had sunken eyes and was already unconscious. She was probably already dehydrated and was succumbing to the confusion due to it. She must have crashed her car in that state. As for the tiny car whose hood had been ruined, it was certain that the air conditioner in the car was probably unusable now. Miraculously, thanks to the cool air that was retained, the fat middle-aged man in the car was still alive. Ever since the two of them left their car, he had been eyeing them closely. Ads by PubFuture. When Lin Sanju walked past the side of his car, the fat man suddenly faced her direction and rapped on his car window quite a few times. Honestly speaking, Lin Sanju was not a hard-hearted person. However, she felt like she was melting. She did not even know how long she could last. There was no way she could even squeeze an ounce of compassion, so she just looked at the fat man with a frown. Behind a sheet of glass, the fat man's voice was muffled and unclear. "Outside, hot, can we still walk?" Lin Sanju could roughly guess what he meant. She shook her head indicating that he could not. After that, she continued forward. The hot exhaust that was spewing from the car made the bad situation even more insufferable. She really could not stand not moving away. As he saw her leaving, the fat man became angry. He pulled open his car door. "I am talking to you. Stop right there. Aren't you walking just fine?" Before he could finish his sentence, he abruptly burst into an ear-piercing scream. That soul-numbing scream was filled with agony. It was even louder than the engines. Lin Sanju turned her head quickly. She noticed that a series of blisters have appeared on parts of the fat man's skin which was directly exposed to the exhaust outside. The scarlet-red blisters on his skin burst open. They were all over his face and hands. It was as if he was scalded by hot boiling water. It was a ghastly sight seeing the blisters burst and revealed patches of damaged skin. His painful screams continued. Lin Sanju could not take it any longer. She held on to Luther to stabilize herself. She lifted her leg and kicked the man back into his own car. After that, she slammed the door. All of a suddenly, the painful screams quietened. Seeing that the fat man's burns were not worsening, Lin Sanju panted then exchanged a panicked look with Luther. The effectiveness of her ability did not decline after all. The truth was that the external temperature had already reached a terrifying level. It was at the level that a mixture of heated exhaust and the surrounding air was sufficient to cause burns to a normal person. Stop thinking about it. Let's go. Even the talkative Luther was speaking sparingly. The two of them walked hurriedly out from the car queue. After they left the hundreds or thousands of running engines, they finally felt a little better. They crossed the road and walked onto the sidewalk, which was lined with trees. They did not dare to delay and headed quickly in the direction of the shopping mall. The leaves on the trees have already lost their green hue. The black, dried, and shrunken leaves were all on the ground under the trees. Every now and then, Lin Sanju would see a few motionless people lying on the ground. Every inch of their skin was covered with burns, their body no longer showed any signs of breathing. No matter how strong she was, this was the first time that Lin Sanju saw that many dead people. Feeling somewhat fearful and nauseous, she tried swallowing her own saliva a few times, but her mouth was dry, there was not even a hint of moisture. Let's drink that last can of cola. Luther's hoarse voice came from behind her. Lin Sanju considered for a moment before taking the can of cola out. Even though the cola may not be that hydrating, there was more than enough food and water in the supermarket. She saw no point suffering outside and torturing themselves any further. In the past, she could never finish a can of cola in one go, but now she even felt the amount was simply too little. Without caring about the taste, they shared the hot cola and finished the can. After they had thrown the can away, they walked for a while before the front door of the shopping mall finally gradually appeared clearer and clearer to them. The fountain, which previously never stopped, was now so dry that it had cracked open. It was as though no water had ever flowed through it. Nevertheless, the few bodies in the fountain which were facing downwards proved that the fountain was once their last ray of hope. Dead corpses with burnt skins littered the ground, creating a grisly scene. Lin Sanju lowered her head, carefully avoiding the corpses on the ground, leaping ahead as she advanced. When she occasionally looked up, she found that Luther, though carrying Marcy, had managed to walk ahead of her somehow. Just as she wondered how he could walk that quickly, she immediately got her answer. As if it didn't bother him, Luther stepped on the back of a body which appeared to belong to a young mother. He strutted forward into the shopping mall as if he was walking on normal ground. Lin Sanju hurried over, and managed to chase after him. She hit his arm angrily. "Can't you have more respect for the dead?" A single sentence made her throat so dry that it hurt. Luther was startled by her. He looked slightly perplexed for a moment before he reacted. Oh, I'm sorry. I must have seen too many dead bodies. I'm probably somewhat desensitized to that." He looked a little sorry as showed one of his buckteeth. "In the beginning, I was like you." Seeing that he looked sorry, Lin Sanju did not say anything more, even though she felt uncomfortable. She changed the subject. "We just have to walk over there, where there is an escalator going down." Luther nodded. Next, he scanned the shopping mall and sighed lightly. "This is a really beautiful place." Without stopping, he followed behind Lin Sanju as they headed for the supermarket. It was reported that the shopping mall was designed by a famous French architect. It was 5 stories high. There was a hollow in the center of the mall, and a dense foliage of tropical plants was planted there. Probably due to a stratified structural design, the tropical trees grew up till the position of the 5th-story lift. Walking here was as if they were strolling through a primitive forest. But this was not the time to admire all that. Lin Sanju took a quick glance of the tropical forest, sensing that something was wrong, but she could not tell what it was at the moment. She shook her head and rushed down the escalator. Yet, when they saw the supermarket, both of them could not help gasping. The situation was worse than what Lin Sanju had anticipated. She knew that she would not be the only one that thought of the supermarket. But the situation here was definitely beyond her expectation. As the temperature soared last night, the supermarket was obviously still operating. It was filled with people. Naturally, all the people were dead now. Their motionless, speechless corpses laid on the floor. The seemingly frozen scene captured the chaos that ensued last night. There were empty bottles everywhere. Bottles of mineral water, beverages, there were dried up patches of splashed fruit juice all over the beige floor. The beverage section looked ransacked as the last few bottles of water lay haphazardly on the shelves. Many of the dead bodies on the ground hugged on tightly to bottles of beverages covered in blood and body fluids. The most shocking thing was that the death of a cashier was clearly not due to dehydration. There was a deep dent at the back of her head. The cash register in front of her was opened wide, and it was empty inside. Luther clicked his tongue twice, disapprovingly. The robber must be feeling stupid right now. That's if he is still alive. Lin Sanju was extremely thirsty. She grabbed a bottle of water from one of the corpses that was at the entrance. She drank half the bottle noisily without caring about any taboo, then passed the bottle to Luther. Even though the supermarket was filled with dead bodies and was in a mess, but at least the food and water left behind should still be sufficient to sustain the three of them. Luther was already feeling very tired after carrying Marcy for the whole journey. He placed her on the floor mumbling, "She doesn't even have a real flesh and blood, why is she so heavy?" Lin Sanju rested at a cashier counter with no dead bodies. Hearing that, she asked inquisitively, "I wanted to ask earlier, Marcy was around just now, so it wasn't convenient." When the Duolujang commented that she was made of false flesh and blood, what does that mean? Contemporary romance. She is one of my personalities that had taken corporal form. In some sense, she is an independent human being, Luther explained and drank from the bottle at the same time. But, the degree of her realness is controlled by the strength of my ability. My ability isn't that great right now, so many aspects of Marcy are not that, lifelike. Lin Sanju nodded and did not pursue the topic further. After both of them had enough water, they rested for a while. Following which, they felt the uncomfortable hunger pangs from their empty stomachs. "Let's take a look at the food section," Lin Sanju suggested. "Wait," Luther stopped her. He looked around and asked, "Is there anything around here that we can hold and use as a weapon?" You don't know this, but a supermarket is a place full of resources, and most mishaps happen in such places. Luther and Lin Sanju walked carefully along the aisles of dark shelves, watching each other's back every so often. They both held a red wine bottle in one of their hands. They had no choice since that was the only thing near the entrance which could be used as a weapon. The other items were all pretty much useless. A red wine bottle was not a reliable weapon to use against a duolujang, but they could at least throw the bottle at it and run. They had purposely let Marcy lie flat between two dead bodies at the entrance. At first glance, she looked no different from a corpse. They could not tell if she would wake up unhappy, but that was a problem Luther had to deal with. "Let's go to the ready-to-eat section," Luther whispered. Just when he wanted to suggest that they should eat starting from the ready-to-eat section, he smelled a strong rancid smell. Unwilling to accept this, he reached out to grab a box of potato salad. Just as he held it, he threw it away. "They're all spoilt. They're all in this putrid state. Isn't that obvious?" Lin Sanju asked rhetorically, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. After they had spent at least 20 minutes, the two of them managed to explore the entire supermarket groping around in the dark. Other than the few bodies which were found further inside, nothing else was out of the ordinary. They no longer had to be on alert. Both of them put down the red wine bottles and continued walking. It was tiring to hold a bottle, walking around. Even though there is no sunlight, it is really too dark in this basement supermarket. Do you know where we can find some flashlight? Luther was feeling a little annoyed. Ever since we came to this hyperthermal hell, I have only been in the dark. Let's look for it later. I am not sure if they sell it here since this is a high-end import supermarket. As they exchanged conversation, they quickly reached the food section. Each of them grabbed a few packets of food item and carried them in their arms, even though they were unable to read the labels to see what they contained. "I remember that they did sell lavender-scented candles. It should be fine as long as we have some light." As they chatted quietly, Luther managed to open the packet in his hands. "Oh, these are chips," he called out, being pleasantly surprised. Suddenly, a voice reverberated through the quiet supermarket, "Luther, come out now." It was Marcy's voice. "Marcy, Marcy, you're awake." Luther heard her voice and quickly pulled Lin Sanju along as he ran. They reached the entrance very quickly. Under the light that seeped down from upstairs, he noticed that Marcy was standing in between two dead bodies, and her face was filled with resentment. Her darkened expression contrasted starkly with that bright red hair of her. Luther explained himself cheerily and offered the potato chips to her, trying to appease her. Only then did she make a humph and decided to overlook the matter. Subsequently, she turned to look at Lin Sanju and hesitated for a moment, not saying a word. Lin Sanju did not know why, but she suddenly felt a little anxious. She put down the tidbit she was eating, and asked Marcy, "Is there something wrong with my stats? I wouldn't call that a problem, maybe I haven't collected enough samples." Marcy smiled in a consoling manner. your stats are a little different from those I have collected before. What do you mean? Lin Sanju quickly asked. It is not that easy to explain like this. Why don't you see for yourself? Just as she said this, Marcy's nails grew out again. Different from before, this time round, there was a faint golden glow on the tips of her nails. Marcy looked around and found a place that was darker. She signaled for both of them to come to her. Next, using her index finger, she wrote some words in midair. Each word appeared with a golden glow, floating in midair. Lin Sanju tried to suppress her astonishment but with little avail. Your stats are on the left, Marcy explained and continued writing. I will write down Luther's stats for you to make some comparisons. Open black lens bracket. Lin Sanju's passive skills. Close black lens bracket. Heat resistance adaptation. Able to effectively resist environmental temperatures up to 125 degrees Celsius. Keen senses. Not always accurate, but the probability of it being accurate is high. Ads by PubFuture. The third skill is currently being developed. Open black lens bracket. Lin Sanju's physical stats. Close black lens bracket. Height, 168 centimeters. Weight, 56 kilograms. Average timing for 100 meters dash, 11.6 s. Reaction time, considerably quick. Vision, 5.0. Body fat percentage, 18.5%. Muscle mass percentage, 45.7%. Potential growth value, high. When Marcy finished writing, Luther was the first one to exclaim, huh, which made Lin Sanju even more nervous. Marcy rolled her eyes at him and continued saying to her, "These are not all your stats. I chose some of the more important categories. I will write down the other information after we made the comparison." Lin Sanju nodded and read through her own stats quickly. Since she was young, she had been good at sports, being quite nimble. She did well in the phys ed classes that most girls hated, scoring a high score for her college exams. Naturally, she had always been teased by boys with phrases like, all brawn and no, anyway, other than her potential growth value, the numbers seemed normal to her. Just as Lin Sanju was deep in thought, Luther's stats started to appear in midair as well. Open black lens bracket. Luther's passive skills. Close black lens bracket. Extreme climate adaptation. Able to survive in climates with extremely high or low temperatures. Enhanced condition. Improved physical capabilities. Optimized speed. Improved agility. Eagle eye. Greatly improved scope of vision and improved night vision. Parkour. Having cat-like dexterity. The sixth skill is currently being developed. Open black lens bracket. Luther's physical stats. Close black lens bracket. Height, 174 centimeters. Weight, 70 kilograms. Speed, 120. Strength, 89. Max attack, 101. Potential growth value, 192. Once Marcy had written down a few categories, Lin Sanju understood where she was coming from. Marcy noticed this and stopped writing. You should be able to tell, right? Luther's stats are generated conceptually using my ability, and they are like, well, a game characters. Lin Sanju nodded. Her eyes lingered many times on the line, potential growth value. I don't know why, but I am unable to conceptually convert your data. It is not to say that it is too impossible, but it is not necessary. All your stats are as they are. You can get this from any physical examination, that's not all. Most importantly, it is that potential growth value, Marcy explained calmly. Everyone, at least for all the people we've met, displayed a fixed number under their potential growth value. Unless they get a rare opportunity, those numbers don't change. You are the first exception. Luther's, 192, was still glowing faintly in midair. Lin Sanju frowned, but Marcy continued, among posthumans, Luther's potential growth value is considerably high. That is to say, you should be about the same level as he is. 204. Lin Sanju lifted her head and exclaimed, Ren Nan. Ren Nan's potential growth value was 204. I used my ability on his corpse so I could see a lot of his information. It seems that my stats must be pretty good. Luther looked as though he had been punched in the stomach. He yelled, how can that guy have a higher potential growth value than me? That's impossible. I am the heavenly king of potential. The heavenly king of stupidity suits you better. Marcy sighed faintly, turning to face Lin Sanju. That's right. Do you understand now? Your stats are just too abnormal. I have no explanation for this now. Contemporary romance. It's all right. Lin Sanju laughed. Originally, She had no concept of such stats and abilities. Since she knew her stats now, it was different. She thought about it for a moment and set it aside. Just as she planned to tell Marcy to sit and eat with them, Luther suddenly paused and asked, "You said that, you kept Ren Nan's corpse with you?" "Yeah," Lin Sanju answered and dug around in her pocket. She found it empty. She suddenly remembered that she had changed her outfit before leaving. Her Ren Nan card must have been in the pocket of the previous pants she was wearing. "It is in the condominium." "What's the matter?" Luther slapped his thigh. "That's great. We will rest when the sun is out. We should go back later at night and search his body." Remembering the weird posture of Ren Nan's corpse, Lin Sanju felt a little uneasy. Search his body. Under the faint golden glow of the words, her cat-like amber eyes looked even lighter and brighter. Luther was looking quite gleeful. We have to see what he left behind. People like him who have experienced a few worlds would usually bring some valuable stuff around. The items could be very handy. Since you killed him, those items also belong to you, Marcy quickly added, as if she was afraid that Lin Sanju might misunderstand. On the contrary, Lin Sanju did not really care. She smiled and said, "Okay. We can go back later at night. What do we do now?" As she spoke, she passed the packet of digestive biscuits to Marcy. Marcy took out 2 pieces and starting munching. "I think this is quite a good place. We have food and drinks, and there isn't any sunlight here. We should find some items to light up the place. Then, we could clean up the mess first." As she said this, she lifted the chin of one of the corpse. She was right. Even though the air was dry, they could not tell if the bodies would still rot in such high temperature. As the 3 of them were thirsty and hungry, they cleared through a heap of food like a tornado and drank more water. Luther was the first one to leap up. "Let's go. Let's get ourselves some lavender-scented candles." As they knew that there were no threats in the supermarket, this time round, they moved much quicker. Without taking much time, the supermarket was lit with the soft glow of candlelights. As the candles burned, a pleasant lavender scent filled the supermarket. "We have already experienced 2 worlds. This is the first time we had such a romantic atmosphere," Luther smiled as he said this to Lin Sanju, while he was dragging a dead body by its shoulder jerkily along the ground. "How can you find this romantic when you are dragging a dead body?" Lin Sanju lifted the legs of that dead body, finding his comment rather amusing. "Heavenly King, can you be quicker?" Both of them carried the body, slowly dragging it up the escalator, step by step. Marcy was standing at the top of the escalator, keeping a watch out. She signaled that it was safe. This was an army gesture that both Luther and herself learned from the previous world. Both of them hurried to the first floor and dumped the body on another heap of corpses. These people were once alive. Lin Sanju felt a little disturbed. She sighed in her heart and asked, "How many dead bodies are left?" "Not many. Just 2 to 3 corpses which are over in the cosmetic area." Luther wiped his sweat. His rabbit-like fair skin was now red. As he said this, the 3 of them climbed down the escalator and headed to the cosmetic section. Bang! Suddenly, they heard a ramming sound. It reverberated clearly through the supermarket. "What's that? Didn't you say that there was nobody else in the supermarket?" Marcy spoke very softly as her body tensed up. "There was really nobody just now. Who knows where they've come in from?" Luther scolded back quietly. At that moment, the 3 of them were all holding kitchen knives. The group was led by Luther, followed by Lin Sanju, then Marcy, who was keeping a lookout for anything that might come from the side. They headed slowly toward the direction where they heard the collision. Getting the kitchen knives was Lin Sanjo's idea. They managed to find them at the ready-to-eat section. Perhaps because they have been used for cutting lu mei, braised meat, they were not that sharp. They carried a faint stench of rotten lu mei even though they have been wiped. Nevertheless, with the knives, the 3 of them felt much more confident. Bang! Another dull sound rang out through the air. This time, the 3 of them recognized immediately the correct direction where the noise came from and headed in the upper left direction. "It's here," Marcy pointed. Not far from them, under the dim light of the candles, they could see a door with the sign, "Staff Only." The 3 of them looked at each other. Lin Sanju nodded and started to speak. It didn't matter who the person was, a young female voice would certainly always let the other party lower their guard. "Who's inside? Come out now." The air stood still for a few seconds. Contemporary romance. After they waited for a while, and just when Lin Sanju was about to impatiently ask again, an unmistakable sobbing sound came from behind the door. They heard a bright, timid voice asking, "Who are you?" The three of them looked at each other with some astonishment, and feeling slightly relieved, they lowered their kitchen knives. This was not only because they could clearly tell that it was a female voice but also because the voice sounded childlike. The person behind the door was definitely no older than 14. "Hey, little girl, how old are you? We are not bad people," Lin Sanju cautiously followed with a question, "Are you alone behind that door?" The little girl muttered a, "Yeah," with a sobbing tone and replied, "I am 11. Hearing this, the three of them placed their kitchen knives down. Marcy even went so far as to grab a towel from one of the shelves and covered them. Almost as if she was afraid to scare the little girl, she asked in a gentle voice, "Why are you here alone? Where are your parents?" The little girl's sobbing suddenly intensified. My dad works here. He brought me here last night." Afterward, many people rushed into the supermarket and started fighting over items, so my dad locked me here and told me not to come out. Ads by PubFuture. Sympathy flashed across their faces. Needless to say, the little girl's father must be dead. He might even be one of those dead bodies that they carried outside. "Little girl, what's your name? Why don't you open the door first?" Marcy knocked the door gently. "My name is Wang Cici. My dad warned that I should not open the door unless it was for him." The little girl sobbed again, "But he is not even back now." The three of them could not help feeling emotional. She was just a little girl. They did not even know how she managed to survive that night. "You should also say something. Comfort her," Luther hinted softly to Lin Sanju. For a split second, Lin Sanju had a difficult expression on her face. Marcy, who was still speaking softly at the door, gave Lin Sanju a look of encouragement, so Lin Sanju had no choice. She coughed and steeled herself to say, "Wang Cici, stay strong." Just as these words came out from her mouth, the two others immediately looked at her as if she was some freak. Lin Sanju looked back helpless, showing that it was beyond her. Even though she was a woman, she was raised like a boy since young and was at her wits' ends when it came to dealing with children. Furthermore, in such a situation where that child was already so frightened and fragile, it would be considered pretty good if that her comfort did not leave any sort of mental trauma. Faced with Lin Sanju's cold words, Wang Cici instantly stammered and stopped speaking. Marcy rolled her eyes at Lin Sanju and whispered to the both of them, "The little girl probably already gained heat resistance adaptation. It is not right for her to keep staying inside." Then, she quickly said, "Cici, your dad told you not to come out because it wasn't safe at that time. It is safe right now. Why don't you come out? We can wait for your father together, okay?" Wang Cici, who was behind the door, seemed rather hesitating. She made two sniffling sound as if she was unable to make a decision. At this point, Marcy, who was now overwhelmed with a sense of maternal instinct, felt her heart melt when she heard the girl's sniffles. She walked quickly to the door and continued in the gentle voice, "You have been inside since last night, I guess you should be hungry now. Auntie has a lot of food here, what do you like to eat?" "Well, I am very hungry. I wish I could see the fish that my mom cooks," Wang Cici said timidly, "and a chocolate bar." Tears welled up in Marcy's eyes. She wiped the corner of her eyes and replied rapidly, "Sure. Let's open the door. Auntie will bring you to get some food, okay?" Seeing that she was handling the situation pretty well, the two idle people behind her started to gossip in whispers. Luther said softly, "Marcy told me that she was married once before. But the two of them could not have children, so it ended in a divorce." No wonder. Lin Sanju was a little phased when she heard this. So even a split personality that had taken corporeal form can indeed own a completely different set of life experiences. Just when the two of them were chatting idly, Wang Cici finally agreed to come out under Marcy's persuasion. "Auntie, I am coming out," Wang Cici called out apprehensively. They heard the click of the door, and the doorknob turned. However, the door did not move. Marcy was surprised. She lowered her head and examined the door, then facing the gap at the door frame, she asked, "Cici, did your father lock the door from outside when he left?" The little girl suddenly became panicky and replied, "Yes, I think so. I can't remember." The three of them frowned. As the supermarket's main target group are high-end consumers, the materials used for the interior construction were all specifically chosen. Hence, even the staff room door was quite thick. Marcy examined the keyhole and yelled determinedly, "Back away, Cici. Auntie will kick the door down." Before the other two people could stop her, she already gave the door a forceful kick. Marcy drew in a breath and immediately sat down on the floor holding her leg. The door did not even budge a little. What should we do? She turned and looked at the two people behind her, feeling slightly helpless. Lin Sanju opened her mouth but finally kept silent. She might be able to store the door away. That is if the metal gates didn't count just now, which would mean that she only had one more chance to use that ability. But it is only 7:30 in the morning right now. Besides, she could not tell for certain if she indeed had one more chance. Lin Sanju hesitated for a moment and did not say anything in the end. After all, there were other methods to open that door. If indeed she could still use that ability one more time, it might be better for everyone if she kept it for something else. When we were carrying the dead bodies, I noticed that some of them were the staff from the supermarket. They even had their uniforms on. Luther spoke first after he ruminated for a while. Lin Sanju secretly felt a sense of relief and less guilty about it. Luther eyed the entrance of the supermarket, hinting to the two others, perhaps, a person lying over might have the key. That must be it. Since Wang Cici's father locked the door, he must have the key. If his daughter was in the supermarket, he definitely wouldn't go far. He most likely died in the supermarket and was brought upstairs by them. Following this flow of logic, the three of them got their spirits up and gathered together to discuss. As the sunlight outside was very strong now, the temperature must be presumably high. Since Lin Sanju's body had not been strengthened, they decided that she will stay behind to guard the staff room door. Before she left, Marcy stressed to Lin Sanju with a very worried look, "Don't say anything you shouldn't. Don't scare that kid." Lin Sanju nodded with a face full of awkwardness. When the two of them left, the supermarket instantly became quiet again. Wang Cici seemed to realize that the stiff, stay strong sister was the only one left outside. Other than the occasional sob, she did not say a word, so Lin Sanju was bored stiff. She started to play with the kitchen knife in her hand as she sat on the floor. Honestly speaking, now that Luther and Marcy left, this was a good time for her to try out if she still had one last chance to use her ability for today. However, she could not convince herself to make the decision. Other than that slightly smelly kitchen knife in her hand, she did not have anything worth storing. If she wasted her last chance just like that, she would really weep without tears. She did not know how long she struggled with it and hesitated before she heard the footsteps by the escalator near the entrance. Lin Sanju stood up and looked over. It was Luther and Marcy. "That was fast," she asked, puzzled. Luther showed her his two buckteeth and laughed, "We were lucky. The first woman we searched was the manager of the supermarket. I found a bunch of keys in her apron." After he had said this, he took out and showed Lin Sanju a bunch of clanging keys. "Lucky for us, this manager labeled all her keys. So, this should be easy for us." Lin Sanju paused for a moment, as she eyed the entrance. "Wang, where is her father? Weren't you supposed to," she lowered her voice, "find that from her father's dead body? Sigh, the main thing is that we have the key. It might not be a bad thing that we could not find that person." Luther handed the keys to Marcy casually. "Cici, Auntie is back. I will help you open the door now," Marcy said as she squatted down. Just as Marcy slot the key into the keyhole, Lin Sanju suddenly felt her heart skipped a beat. When she was finally aware of what she was doing, a white light had already flashed in her palm. The kitchen knife had turned in a card, and she pinched it tightly in her hand. Lin Sanju looked at the card in her hand with some shock. Before she could regret over her impulsive action, she could hear the sound of the door being unlocked. Next, Marcy gently pushed open the door and said, "Cici, Auntie already opened the door." Just as Marcy took a step forward, Lin Sanju suddenly tackled her and pushed her to the ground.